They said I wasn't paying attention because Goblin Slayer was neither dead nor he came back from the dead. He was just very injured and he got healed. And if I was paying attention, I would have noticed that.
Pay attention, class!
Well, maybe if the author knew what he was doing, this wouldn't have happened, because he clearly named the spell that was used, and its name was Resurrection. That means bringing people back from the dead, and it's not what happened in that episode. Who wouldn't be confused if the author doesn't know how to name his spells?
This author knows completely what he's doing.
And that's what gets to me about all of you who love Goblin Slayer. You insist that the author knows what he's doing, and by not giving names to any character, proves how much he knows how to play tabletop games. And here he is unable to tell the difference between resurrection and healing. He named one thing in the whole show. One. And he doesn't even know what it means.
He didn't say anything!
That's what happens when you keep telling yourself, names don't matter, and words can have any meaning you want them to. You reach a point where you can say whatever you want to, and it can have any meaning you want to, regardless of the words you use, because there never was a meaning to begin with.
It can be interpreted however the fuck you want to. However the fuck you want to. However the fuck you want to.
Another delusional fanboy appeared, this time for defending Goblin Slayer. Here are his delusions. People like to hate Goblin Slayer for not being a deep fantasy or not having some deep meaning for its violence or sexual content. No, people hate the delusional fanboys such as yourself for constantly saying it has a deep meaning for its violence or sexual content. If you hadn't hyped it, people wouldn't be bothered by it. Something doesn't have to be complex, philosophical, or meta to be good or deserving of attention. I agree, which begs the question, why did you delusional fanboys lost your shit in the first episode and give it so much attention when it's none of that? Goblin Slayer got attention because it went against the grain of complex high fantasy and made it darker, more violent. What are you talking about? High fantasy is by definition not complex. It's the hero's journey in the most basic form. Being dark and violent does not make it a subversion of high fantasy. It makes it dark fantasy, which is its own subcategory. That's almost as ridiculous as the ones who are saying Goblin Slayer is a subversion of isekai because he doesn't get transported to a different world. It is grounded in reality. It stripped it to its most basic, and that appeals to a lot of people, especially the viewers who grew up on tabletop RPGs like D&D. You can always trust a delusional fanboy to use double standards like these. It's exactly like reality, but it's also exactly like a game. And for the millionth time, I need to point out the game has no relation with this bullshit. I've spent my teenage years playing RPGs non-stop. They were nothing like this bullshit. Then he describes the personality of the protagonist as if that is supposed to make him a subversion or something, when it's just an autistic man-child with heavy doses of OCD. This doesn't make him better, it just makes him more relatable to the autistic man-children who are defending the show. Then he uses the typical excuse of the show not glorifying rape, although it is full of fan service and the camera deliberately shows everything. Also, it's ironic to say it's against rape, while at the same time having an impotent harem lead who ignores every woman who wants to have sex with him. It's not just rape, sex is evil in general! So once again you see why fandoms are their own worst enemy. They call a pseudo-intellectual hater anyone who points out their hypocrisy. They call a subversion anything that doesn't follow the strict definition of a formula, even though it's just a different formula, like treating dark fantasy as a deconstruction of high fantasy. They use double standards, so whatever they say is always correct, such as something being real but also being fictional at the same time. They constantly tell themselves a game that, down to it, can be played however the fuck you want to, is correct only with the house rules they play with. They think problematic characters they can project themselves onto are amazing, although they are just self-inserting at characters who are the worst humanity has to offer. And they keep saying deviant fanservice is there for deep and thought-provoking reasons. Although the moment you remind them how they said the show is not deep, they will just call you a pseudo-intellectual hater. The anime community is a fucking joke. And that means it's a subversion of seriousness.
Why do I like Goblin Slayer? Because this world is largely based on tabletop RPGs I've never heard of in any of the series I've read. Subverting our expectations in episode 1, Goblin Slayer goes on to be a very grim fantasy. You're brought into reality real quick. Goblin Slayer is a character I connect with on a deep level. Kill all the fucking goblins. So fucking badass. What is Goblin Slayer about? Autistic level of obsession. It just makes me think, you know? The other party members prove themselves to be reliable tacticians. Well, let's not get carried away here and serve as sort of tools for Goblin Slayer to control in any given situation. That's not how real teamwork works. The best character to compare Goblin Slayer to is absolutely Guts from Berserk. There's a metaphor happening here. He rises above it with creativity, not magic powers. And then you immediately get that contradiction. Why I'm a genius.
Someone dug up the old Goblin Slayer controversy, so let's see how things have changed a few years later. The opening statement is, what was the controversy even about? The scene wasn't even that graphical. Did people become that soft? I don't know, did they? It's not like we have 26-year-old babies crying on screen over nothing of importance so they can get what they want from hundreds of thousands of mandlets. Let's check out the best replies. Don't come to our anime for a proper discussion because it always comes down to different people liking different things. Also known as shut up, I like it. If you say people are soft, many who identify as soft will get pissed off, regardless of the statement being true or not. They identify very easily and only with the worst aspects of themselves. Instead of looking for the best aspects they should be striving for. Basically, they keep themselves at the bottom and act like babies every time they are told to grow up. It's the result of the internet making people not wanting to face reality, because why would they? They can sit in front of a computer and be part of any fictional world they like without ever getting physically hurt. Back in retro times, people didn't get traumatized by everything. When they were watching something they didn't like, they stopped watching it and forgot about it. Now they just complain about everything. Not watching it is not enough, they don't want anyone else to watch it as well, which has the effect of making more people curious. So more people end up watching it and also get offended because of it. The backlash about every edgy show that comes out is evidence of how fragile people are nowadays. And the worst part is that they are not complaining about the writing, they're just being over-emotional and post nonsensical garbage trying to cancel the show for offending their sensibilities. Speaking of writing, the actual problem with that scene in Goblin Slayer is that it was provocative. It wasn't there for exploring a theme. Goblin Slayer is not an anime you watch for the social issues caused by sexual assault. It's a power fantasy about one-dimensional people with no name, following around a one-dimensional power fantasy who has no face, in a show that is one step away from a harem comedy. That scene was just trying to be shocking and sexy for the sake of being shocking and sexy. Similar to the Cuties movie. Goblin Slayer is as bad as a Cuties movie, imagine that. Now smash that like button so the 26-year-old softy will stop crying over things that don't matter. Laugh at him, 26 years old and crying.